in this postprandial moment, digesting our food. And this morning it's been really amazing. Each and every single one of our speakers have shared with us the reality of their worlds in a very even crude and harsh, realistic manner, with the intention of trying to rethink or adapt or feel the way we think about our worlds. So let's now resume today's afternoon session with the will of talking about what freedom means, free thinking, and reflecting on thoughts, on the act of thinking. We will be three in this conversation. Unfortunately, our colleague Pérez Ponte has not been able to join us, so we send him a big warm hug from us. But we have two wonderful women, Miss Mónica Allende and Miss Sílvia Pérez Cruz, the two of them coming from very different worlds, being free minds and in their discipline, somehow interdisciplinarity, and building different regards and shedding different vibrations and really interesting thoughts for sure. So here they are.
Bueno, arrancamos.
Right, shall we?
Muchísimas gracias.
Let's go. Thank you very much, Sandra.
Un privilegio, ¿no? Estar
This
aquí.
is a privilege to be here.
Entro en estos espacios con esta sensación de grandísimo privilegio, ¿no? Y con mucha humildad.
Being humble, this is a great privilege, but we feel very humbled because I believe this is the starting point for us to tackle very complex topics. I was thinking about the title, Resuming Free Thinking, and this idea, resume, what does it mean to restart thinking or resuming thinking? Because this idea of free thought is resuming every single day, betting somehow for my thought not to be colonized, to be somehow, to let it go free, to let it be free.
Aquí está bien. ¿Sigue? Así.
Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. So I was thinking about it round, on and on, and if you allow me, I will begin with this form of living, this way of life, way of working, which is intertwined. And I believe this morning, as Javier Gomez said, this idea of the different languages, when he was talking about language from the experience. And I always believe that my way of understanding life departs from experience, and he's also framed it this way. So I have a very quick presentation, a draft almost, so that I will not get lost. I'll keep my mind following the main idea. I wouldn't like you to pay attention to the words themselves, rather the constellation of my mind, my brain, because they are stars, ideas, concepts that are always changing and creating a network of ramifications being interwoven. So I depart from a very pragmatic departure point. This is the raw material, this is where we start, and somehow I won't be following a linear trajectory, because somehow This is how my brain
Entonces
works.
esta constelación cambia,
So this
va
constellation
cambiando
changes, it
lo que me
evolves,
inspire, lo que me
it
preocupe,
keeps
la idea del momento,
changing
la situación actual.
regarding the current
Pero de todas
situation,
formas,
the
de
idea I
alguna
have.
forma no
I'm
tengo
thinking
jerarquía,
about
sino que
that.
esta
I don't
constelación
have
se autoriza
hierarchies. This
y
constellation
es una aceptación
is
de una realidad, ¿no?
self-fed,
Entonces salto un
let's
poco a
say.
esta historia, ¿no?
And this allows
A
me
esta
to
historia
jump
de,
to
de
this
este
story,
entendimiento, ¿no? De este
the way
entendimiento de quién
we
yo soy, cómo funciona,
understand who I
esta idea de
am,
un método de
how this
de
idea of
experiencial, ¿no?
these
De experiencia, que parte desde la
experience
experiencia.
methods.
Y para mí, dentro de esta metodología,
For me, inside this
dentro
methodology,
de esta forma de ser, de esta
this
forma de
way
vivir,
of being, this
tengo que
way
estar
of
en movimiento,
living,
tengo que
I need
estar
to
en movimiento,
use
en
movement.
movimiento,
I am
y
in
de alguna
constant
forma
movement,
resuelvo con los pies.
and somehow
Los
I
pies me llevan de un sitio a otro,
solve
a veces voy a los sitios
any
porque
situations
busco,
with my
unas
feet,
veces
just because
espontáneamente,
I
la idea un poco de
walk.
Flaner, pero normalmente
Like
lo
Flaner
busco
said,
un
I
objetivo.
usually
Igual tengo que ir
I'm
a comprar
searching for an
un libro,
objective,
pero igual tengo
whether I
que
need to
pasar
go
3
and
montes,
walk
bajar 2 ciudades,
to buy a
presentarte
book,
a ti,
maybe I need
y el libro
to
está al
climb
final.
up a
También me
mountain,
lo podría
maybe I
traer
need
Amazon,
to
pero
keep
bueno, esto ya
walking.
siempre está
Of
hecho
course, it
para
could be
ayudar.
Amazon bringing it to you, but no, I want to climb
Y
mountains,
entonces,
walk
en
down
esta idea
and
que
visit
para
you.
mí,
So for me,
cuando me estoy constantemente
the
moviendo, y
idea of
estas ideas
keeping on
mis pies me
moving
van
constantly,
resolviendo,
the
voy
idea of
buscando,
my
se
feet
me crean conceptos
walking
abstractos.
me places
Esta idea del
and
concepto
letting
abstracto
me
para mí a veces es un
move
concepto
around
de vida
helps
que
me
quiero resolver,
to
es una
think
pregunta que
about
quiero resolver,
abstract
y en algunas
concepts
ocasiones se
and
traslada
how
a
I
un
wish
proyecto.
to
En muchas ocasiones se traslada a un proyecto.
often
Pero los
translate
proyectos
this
siempre.
into a project.
Entonces vemos en esta imagen, por ejemplo,
Here in
en
this
esta idea
image,
que no
for
tengo
example, in this
jerarquía de
idea that I
proyectos, ¿no?
don't have
Podemos
project
pensar que siempre
hierarchies, we can think
un gran planteamiento, una
that
gran
there's always
referencia
a
de mi ancestro.
great
Mi ancestro está aquí, ¿no?
idea about my
Y es
ancestry,
un ancestro que es
and this
un
is
País Vasco
where it
profundo,
is. It's
en
the
el cual-
Basque region, the
del cual
rural
desciendo.
Basque region where I come
Y me
from.
gusta mucho de alguna forma,
And I
ahora
love
estoy volviendo un poco
somehow
al entendimiento del
now
ancestro para
I'm
entender el
fully
presente.
understanding
Pero aquí ya
my
sí vemos
ancestry in
contradicciones,
order
porque
to
en realidad yo
understand the
crecí en
present.
Bilbao, que es una ciudad
I was born in
industrial,
Bilbao, an
rubia,
industrial
con
city
polución, y
full
es
of
un
pollution
paisaje
and
el cual me entiende y
rain,
me encanta,
and
es un
it's
paisaje
a
urbano, ciudad
landscape, this
dura.
urban,
Y llevo
harsh
en Londres
city.
38 años.
And I've been living in
Pero en mi
London for
imaginario hago
38
referencia
years.
siempre a este
But in
ancestro.
my
Entonces empiezo a jugar con
imaginary,
estas líneas,
I
¿no?
always
Estos
play
cruzados.
with these lines, with my
Lo
rural
mismo que esta idea
ancestry
que
and
estoy
these
andando,
crossing
que siempre
lines.
estoy andando.
And
A
the
veces
idea
subo
of
montes,
me
que es muy
walking,
único, pero
I
muchas veces
always
ando en
climb
ciudades.
up mountains,
La
but
mayoría
sometimes
de
I
las
walk
veces estoy andando en
cities.
ciudades.
Most of my time,
Y en esta
I'm
idea de
walking
jerarquía
in a
de
city.
proyectos.
And this idea
En
of
la
this
jerarquía de
project
proyectos, que no hay
hierarchy,
jerarquía en mis proyectos, es que
the fact
puedo
that there is
realmente
no
buscar
hierarchy
diferentes
in my
cosas, ¿no?
projects
Decía
allows me to
referencias
find different
de
things. For example,
proyectos que estoy haciendo en
references
México,
to
porque me
projects
interesa
that
la relación que yo
I'm
pueda tener desde el
implementing,
centro
launching
hasta-
in Mexico,
hasta-
for example,
hasta otros espacios, desde el centro un poco de la
in
idea
the
occidental.
center of the Western
¿Qué papel
idea.
cumplo yo ahí? ¿No cumplo
Which is
ningún
my
papel?
role
Voy,
there? Did I
escucho,
play any
veo,
role?
pero
I
siempre
go, I
sin
listen, I
propósito
see,
claro. Es una
but
conversación
never
con el
with
otro.
a specific
O talleres que,
project,
por ejemplo, en otros sitios,
or workshops that
o
I've
ideas que empiezan de
organized in
alguna
some other
forma, y yo
places,
ya
or
fui
things
esa-
that
esa
somehow
pregunta,
start, and
¿no?
I've already
Este-
answered
este
this
grupo
question.
de
For example, this
mujeres
group of
la
women
fotografía en Gran
in the
Bretaña,
picture
imagínate
in the
que en mi
UK.
casa, llegó un momento que en mi casa ya no había sitio para tanto.
This was
Pero
something
en
I
realidad
did
el propósito
at
para
home,
mí no
but
era un propósito
I didn't
de-
have more space for so many women,
codificar
so
una marca,
my
de
will
intencionalidad, de crear
was
un
to
network.
create
Y ahí tenía
some
preguntas, ¿no? ¿Quién éramos,
networking.
cómo
I
estábamos
didn't
creciendo?
want to brand
Y
myself.
cuando
I
esto se convierte en
I
algo
wanted to pose
demasiadamente
questions.
grande
What
para mi
are we?
casa,
What
bueno,
are
pues
we?
ya se va,
So
y otra gente continúa estas ideas.
we stopped it, and some other
Entonces, un
people
poco para
continue with these
situar, ¿no?
ideas.
Lo que significa
So
esta
this
idea
is
de la
for you
experiencia.
to locate, to have some
Entonces, ¿qué es
context
lo que me
about
ayuda? Me
the
ayuda de alguna forma a entender
experiencing.
el tiempo, ¿no? El tiempo
And
en el que estoy, y el
experiencing
espacio que ocupo.
helps me understand the
El tiempo que estoy
space
en
I
el espacio que
inhabit,
también se convierte en
and
mi trabajo, ¿no? ¿Qué
this
trabajos quiero
becomes my
realizar?
work. What sort of projects I want
Voy a
to
jugar un poco de un
define or
sitio-
create.
esto
And
plantea que hay mucha libertad, pero esta
this
libertad no es una
allows us to
libertad
think
de
about
acción,
freedom. It's
¿vale?
not a
Que
freedom
viene
of
dada, sino que
action
fue a
that
raíz de
it's
un
just
planteamiento.
granted. It
Porque en
comes,
realidad yo a lo mejor
it's
en
rooted
Trobades Magazine,
in an idea, because
como
in the
directora
Sunday
de
Times
fotografía
magazine,
durante
as
14 años.
photography director
Y
for
cuando yo
14
leo The
years,
Sunday Times Magazine,
when I left it,
pensaba este
actually,
concepto abstracto, ¿no?
I
Y decía,
thought of this
en aquel momento
abstract
me salió esta
concept.
frase,
back then I thought of, I really want to control I want to be in charge of my own narrative. So I started thinking about what does that mean. I spent a year long telling myself, let's solve. I want to show you this image as a reference because this would be impossible to have it on The Guardian or the Sunday Times magazine. I wanted to show it to you as a reference to the colleagues who were here today. This possibility of explaining this storytelling where I had the chance to actually show via photography, I realized that we were talking about spaces with limitations. So the Sunday Times had this space for photography with quite a relative level of freedom to explain stories that we consider to be really interesting. This is 10 years back then of the Oslo Agreement, and back then we were revisiting that moment in time. So when I left the Sunday Times magazine, I wanted to think about this abstract idea of I want to control my own storytelling, my own narrative. How is this going to happen? And I started with, I spent a year making my life democratizing my life. So I was traveling with the Sunday Times magazine, stick on me, so how people receive you in different parts of the world. I traveled to festivals in Bamako, Benin, China every year, Latin America. And then for a year I decided not to travel, and I wanted to go to the exhibitions where I had the VIP pass, as a Sunday Times. I used always public transport, never taxis. I didn't want to use an isolated way to travel from A to B. The exhibitions, I remember I was in the Tate Gallery watching an exhibition on conflict. There are memory, conflict are topics that I always revisit. And the commissioner at the Tate Gallery was giving a tour and said, "Hey, Monica, what are you doing here?" I said, "I'm visiting the museum." And he said, "Hey, I'll open you before. You can come, I'll give you a private tour." And suddenly I understood that, whoa, exhibitions are, you know, they're always full, you know, so super jammed. You got to do something about it. And this platform, you know, gives you the distance, the opportunity of understanding what daily life is, what truly is. So after this year, this democratic year, let's say, I said, where do I want to go work-wise? So again, the departing point, the idea of the searching, the walking, the experiencing, and the talking. And again, with this form of jumping to the present time, all these paths that have been walked during these 8 years bring us to the moment in time, and what I do currently, reading the room, you know, focusing now on my current work and again retaking the idea of free thought. This is the landscape that I was thinking about for my work as a commissioner. I work with artists, creative people. This is what I do. And for this, I need an audience with whom I'm talking. I need a container and some resources in order to do my work. So this year, this so-called gap year, this was actually last year in the Anand Golden film, denouncing this campaign, this Sackle family campaign. These great philanthropists And in reality, this is a container that I inhabit. My work somehow needs to be directed to spaces, public spaces, and also private, most of them public, where storytellers with whom I work somehow can show what we do. So we had the Louvre, this campaign and the momentum. It has to do with the Sackler family and the fentanyl, the L'Oxycontin, the great addiction epidemics in the US. Knowing that this was happening, and this large campaign by the artists, and somehow Nangoldi manages for the campaign to be really powerful and heard, and to position herself as the main focus. We see it here in the Louvre, in the Met, with actions, activism, etc. And years went by and it was forgotten. However, in the National Portrait Gallery in London, the moment came when they said, let's not ignore this £1 million. And this domino effect happening, and all these galleries setting free. The BNA had a few million donated, and then we said, no, we don't want your money. We want to do things differently. So resources, so that you can tell stories, top quality, good, long storytelling. Right now I'm working, and we have been 12 years working on it. We need resources. So if somehow resources in the public sector depends on fundraising and donations that could cause trouble, if we are searching for capital, depending on, I'm not being too critical, but it depends on what your ethical position is. I'm not saying that everyone thinks the same, our ethical values are the same, that we are all the same, that we're all going to change the world. This is not my perspective. I always believe that we are all individuals, and I've always been interested by the practicality or pragmatically, like Rousseau, of the social contract. This is, I'm going to be part of it, but I work within this habitat as an individual. So again, the Sackler family, this political crisis, I believe 40% of this of the Tate has been closed. Also in the BP. So again, the container for all these resources is pretty fragile. Another story that worries me as storytellers, here, if we look at the date, 2022, the Windworth Gallery director, depending on the University of Manchester, is being forced to renounce. He was dismissed. He wasn't dismissed. He renounced. Again, being forced to do so by the board of trustees from the university, because forensic architecture organized an exhibition. This director, pro-Palestine, even though he's Jew, denounced something that was happening there, and UK lawyers for Israel uses any legal tools to push backwards this situation. So this fragile resource constellation makes us not so free in order to tell the stories the way I like or where I like. We are being menaced here in Western Europe, in these democracies we live in. This jurisprudence, this legal or legal tools are being used to shut up these free voices, right? So I'm talking about my work constellation, our resources. So this is up in the cloud, and somehow as I walk around, I am redesigning, rethinking again the idea of resuming critical thinking. And I see these escalating this. This is every single day of my life in the cultural sector in the UK. And now back to this experiential methodology. Back in 2019, with this idea, I went to Hong Kong and I was talking to this foundation from Hong Kong in Europe, and I was suggesting, hey, as artists, how do we respond towards an imminent repression? Art digests or reflects, but if repression is immediate, how can you respond? And back then in October or November 2019, said, hey, we're inviting you, we're going to facilitate you to see without any sort of structure or roadmap. And that allowed me to spend quite a long time there. Two things I learned, and I was lucky enough to access any way of protests organization system that I'd never knew of. Back in 2014, the first umbrella movement, and they had created horizontal strategy without any leaders, because they knew that the leader was going to be guillotined, eliminated. So any sort of spontaneity, thanks to Telegram, all these tiny corpuscles appeared that could react in a really agile, imminent manner all around the city, and that created difficulty and a great level of confusion to the security forces to be able to control them. So not everyone is great at doing the same thing. So there was a specific group launching tear gas, for example. There was another group that had to wash your eyes with a special product if you had been suffered tear gas contact. These were the first aiders, they were hiding everywhere around the city, the tools they used, the equipment. I could talk for hours and hours. I thought it was amazing how well they had organized with this, some they had actually purchased spaces in Western media about what was happening to spread their message on this imminent danger of oppression. And this came from older generations. It was not the youngster in the streets. There were some of the people saying, I'm not going to be fighting in the front line, but if they were feeling suffering in a specific area or neighborhood, they would call other people thinking that it was Uber. They would go pick them up so that they could be removed from that area. The way, in an amazing strategic manner, how well they could organize themselves in order to survive in these their own identity of the Hong Kong people denied before by the Brits and now the Chinese government. So in such manifestation contexts, in such protests, there's a myriad of pieces, and we all need to understand which is your role. Are you a fast runner? Are you the person who will be able to drive the car and save someone? Do you have some financial resources to fund this movement? I thought that was fascinating. These are fanzines. When I was there, I learned about the structure of how these protest movements were being organized. Every day I went to uni, I visited the artists, etc. And I used to ask them, in this imminent, menacing moment, they told me about useful art. I am describing, they said, or designing unique objects, designing the wonderful posters to cover every single wall. And the next morning they had been peeled off. Javalam, for example, always uses the workshop as a work methodology. And she said, how can I use? So I'm going to organize workshops so that a younger generation who is suffering maybe more suffering or anger, whatever, we shall print about human rights in the old Chinese characters, and we shall print, so that every single one of us can help with his or her means. So, on the one hand, this is what nourishes me, and now I'll be telling you about Adam Brumberg and Marian. We organized a small collective of 3 commissioners, and we suggested this proposal, and this research we've done called a protest manual. These typologies that somehow allowed us to analyze either the barricades in Hong Kong or in the French Revolution, so we could establish this parallelism, the hacking, coordinating barricades, the body as a battle, using traditional media, memes, strike, icons, music. So we saw these typologies. And we established some parallelisms since Hong Kong, throughout history, how these, the sit-in, bet-in, and this is the proposal manual, the COVID stroke, the planet, and we could not inaugurate it, but we did manage to publish it with PhotoWorks in the UK. I will go through it quickly. Sorry, I'm using your time. I'll finish soon. It's 112 pages long, but we will only talk briefly about anonymity, for example, the hang. He's in the UK, he's exiled with his family. He knew that he didn't want to leave Hong Kong, but the situation was very harsh. Javalang is still there, but Hang is now based in the UK. So this is a project he did. You will see it afterwards with more time. This is by Molly from Anonymity. This repressive, harsh moment. We were published, we left Hong Kong, we broadened a little bit the scope of the project. So again, the body is means of protest, protesting from within. Look from Hong Kong, the use of non-traditional media, hacking. This is a dead, interesting project by Arabia in Germany, of this hacking of the walls where Homeland was being filmed in Germany. This is pretty funny actually, because they asked a group of artists to do this graffiti because they were filming Homeland, and the artists go there and they wrote down what they wanted. And it says Homeland is a watermelon, for example, and they hacked everything. So there is an episode where you can see that. So it's again this stereotyping created by Homeland, this culture, all this Middle East and Islam and the Muslim culture. So this was their means to hack it. This was a great piece of work by Sui Fong in Hong Kong, too, using hacking techniques and all the gate technology, where you have your face being recognized, but also the way you walk, because all of us walk in a different manner. These performances being recorded where he's saying, I'm gonna walk in a wrong, weird manner so that I won't be recognized. Music, traditional media, from a perspective, these colleges or fragments where the psychology of image is being highlighted when we remove text. Here it's more clear, right? And this is the Javelin project with the workshops that we did here during the protests. He's an artist that he's always worked with an artistic language being workshopped. He's been working for decades with workers working in sweatshops, textile sweatshops, with whom he always works. He's been doing so for the last decade. It's again a different type of activism. So again, due to the pandemic, we couldn't advance with that, but afterwards I did manage to show this in an exhibition in London of pieces that could not have been portrayed in Hong Kong. Here you can see them all being a pseudonym. And well, basically this is the idea. I won't conclude with any major ideas because I keep moving. There are some issues that are being solved, some others are left pending, and I shall resume working on them 3 years later. So I don't have any conclusive ideas. Again, controlling your storytelling in an aggressive manner, I need somehow to rethink how I work. Right now, I am working intuitively. I am thinking of a sort of homemade philosophy, as Jokenas, the Get Your Photo director. I came from London, and do you want to organize a Get Your Photo? I want it small but well done. So this homemade philosophy, you know, is this emotional, my Basque country, my home at heart, because my true home right now is London. So this centralization, this connection, I like to talk about not the margins, but since this home, small manner, this circle of trust, I need to find this authenticity. I need to detoxic or depoison. You know, Facebook arrived and you became friends with hundreds of people you didn't even know. You know, my friends are sacred and they are very few. So again, investment, but investment in human capital. With whom, how, why? Because you are in search of authenticity. So I always tell myself that this is the biggest of privileges, of being able to choose. I need to set on the table the equation of, no, this is nothing, this is nothing, this is useless, but the power of choice is the greatest of privileges. I was born with privilege, I'm aware of that, because I have a given human capital, and not everyone has the possibility of this. And I am living in I live in a privileged place. I know this too, but right now I'm working in order to be able to choose. When I think of choosing, I want to understand the structure with whom I need to understand these power structures, work structures, right? With the idea of being able to navigate within. I don't want to think that I want to exclude, or again, this homemade philosophy, little, not too ambitious, but well done. I don't want to create silos. I don't want to keep inside a fortress, again, these circles of trust, you know. How are they going to be working? This idea, this question of resuming this critical thing that requests daily investment, because you will depart far away and you need to come back, because we are so bombarded by pollution. So right now, this is where I am. I am living everything. I hadn't said it before when I was thinking about this idea of what is freedom, and if I need to close, if I have this free space, right, this is what I have, this free space where I am, where I feel, and this is always something I shall protect. Sometimes it will be expanded or constrained. This is the idea a little bit.
Toca a mí, ¿no?
And now it's my turn.
Estoy realmente contenta de estar invitada.
Well, I'm so happy for
no he podido ver las tres charlas.
Having been invited here. I couldn't be at the three conversations. I just saw the second and the third, but I wish I had been able to make it for the first conversation, because it was talking about the truth. Anyway, I thought I like it so much that different forms of arts and thinking are mixed together here, are merging together. So this gives me some kind of hope. I have to say that we have got to meet here at the stage, but also we met before during lunchtime. And we thought, well, should we get introduced there? But no, it didn't happen. So we thought, let's improvise. And I guess that, yeah, the discussion will be interesting. And I'm thinking, how can I contribute here? And you were saying, well, it's good to know what each member of a team does and how they contribute. Well, I think that the way I can contribute is from my field of interest, which is singing and music. So this is the way I look for freedom through music. Actually, in real life, in our daily life, I try to seek for references in that state, because it really gives me the idea that I can understand the values, and it seems that whenever I'm in touch with music, I can find the values I've always had. So, Sílvia from Palafrugell, a coastal town. I have grown up surrounded by the sea and pine trees and the coastline, and now I live in Barcelona. I've been living there for 20 years, but I really like the contrast of having lived in a place where everybody knows each other to moving to a city where everybody's anonymous. I like this mixture very much too. And I also looked for the definition, resuming free thoughts. And I was looking for the definition and resuming. Resuming is like renovating or continuing. So I like this very much because I want to know when I'm brave enough to be able to change. So this courage gives me, or this bravery gives me the possibility to change and to choose. And actually choosing, elegir in Spanish is related to elegancia, elegance. So, and I have thought also of this writer who was thinking about the freedom in art, which is not found in solitude, it's found in community. And I've thought about my life, and I thought, well, it very much depends on the phase of my life, and I resonate here with what Javier was saying. It seems that there's always this season that is repeated, but for us, we keep changing depending on our age. And I thought, well, I'm going to try to tell you about my life, and I'm going to try to tell you how I was seeking this freedom. I'm lucky because, well, I think my mother's guilty of that. She's guilty of the way I understand the world and the beauty and horror. My mother was an art historian, and she was a professor. And well, she used to teach young people, young 18-year-old people. And she would ask, how do you feel in front of this masterpiece? And she realized that people are not ready to tell about their feelings, they just repeat what they have studied. So she would go to different schools, 3 to 5-year-old students, and she would teach them how to paint, but also how to play an instrument like guitar. So she would mix music and painting, so music and art, and she kind of created a sort of poetic revolution. She created a school for 2-year-olds till 99-year-olds. So she created this art space, this kind of school in our town. And this was a space where resources were given, and space was given, trust was given, freedom was given. And I remember that this was my little moment of happiness. She started welcoming 2-year-old children, and you know, and 2-year-old children at school, normally they tell them, well, you shouldn't cross this line. However, she would give them space and let these children paint and do whatever they wanted to do. She would just let them space. And people from Barcelona would come to see the exhibitions that she would organize, and these people would ask her, so who's this painting by? And she said, this is a 2-year-old painting. It's made by a 2-year-old. So, and people wouldn't believe it since it was so beautiful. So she would give the space of liberty, and she would organize different talks and different courses of different disciplines. So she would really teach me how to see the beauty of the world, and everything would become fluent. I mean, artistic expression would be anything, a painting, a landscape, a song, all these elements would be a work of art. So to me, well, I feel privileged because I've been given this trust and all these resources, this space. And I'm also a mother, and I wish that in education there would be art, you know, for these children who are good, but also for all those who are not. I mean, you know, art for everybody, because sometimes people struggle to explain painful things, so at least they could transform this struggle into something beautiful. I mean, so it would allow people to create some kind of space.
La música hay
To
tres
me,
momentos. Uno que es
music,
comunicación.
well, there are three moments. One of them is communication.
La mejor manera de comunicarse era mediante la música.
The best way to communicate would be through music. And then there are studies because from the age of 3, I was lucky enough to enjoy lots of artistic inputs, and I would attend all my mother's workshops. And there's also this moment, vocation, and this starts when I'm 12.
Trabajaba en una fábrica, pero su
My
pasión
father
era la música,
used
entonces buscaba
to
canciones
work in a
anónimas,
factory,
hacía arreglos y se contaba
so
con los hombres del pueblo y
he would
cantaban.
also, in his free time, he would look for songs, and he would do his own mixing with other friends, and they would go to the bar and sing and laugh. And I would sing as well with my father. It would be like my only way to communicate with him, because there was no strong relationship. But I remember that when I was 12, I used to sing, and this would put me in another kind of state. And I would think there, wow, something's happening with me. And also my relationship to other people. Because I also thought about studying something social like philosophy or anthropology. I love studying human beings. But I saw that when singing, lots of things were happening, lots of things were moving. So I keep seeking this kind of intimacy of these taverns, crowded with people with their sparkly eyes because they've had a little bit too much to drink. This is a way to put it. And but also there was my will. And my will is that in this ritual of the concert, I want people to feel alive in their very depth, because sometimes everything seems to be against them, and I just want to reactivate their blood. And well, knowing that people have different ideologies, they vote in different things, they come from different places, but seeing then that I am able to touch them and to create some emotion in them, some common emotion, well, it makes me feel that something's happening, even though it may be small. But it's said that music is a universal language. I'm not so sure, because maybe, you know, you're with Korean people and you don't understand a single bit, so you say it cannot be a universal language. However, you can be, you know, in front of a Japanese audience, and even though they don't know what you're saying, they are touched and they are moved. And maybe the volumes are different, but the curve is the same. And this is what I find interesting, creating the bridges. Why do certain people say ole and others say yeah? This is the things that are interesting to me. And I remember this first stage before moving to Barcelona, up until age 18, I felt very free. And I remember thinking about the way children write. You know, they have this kind of big paintbrush kind of writing. And then I got to Barcelona, and I tried to refine the way I sing and sing in more grave tones, and try to reconstruct the way I sing. But I was still living the present moment. However, I was so full of other things that my creative part was done in solitude. I think that the process of composition and creation is a process made in solitude. And then comes the time where you can share with other musicians and show them what you have composed, and try to move all the team and try to make or to give a meaning to it all. And this is actually what makes me happy. However, I thought that, you know, when I was composing, there was not this moment where social media is present everywhere, so I could feel very free. However, my freedom started changing when interpretation came up, because, you know, there's this idea of repetition, and you know how things may happen. And I remember when my voice was heard in the tavern, I can feel all of my voice, and my internal walls would be released. And at the beginning, you just feel it. You feel the way your voice is flowing out. And well, nowadays the voice is an open gate, so I felt that with interpretation I would reach more and more places. However, a certain moment came where I thought, wow, I have to stop now because I feel I'm going to burst. And then starts a moment with community, a moment of silence. And then I've also been very lucky here because I've had the freedom and the resources, and more people would trust me. So this gives you some kind of trust. So at some moment I stop a little bit, or let's say I slow down, and I'm trying to seek other spaces.
No es una persona, ¿no?
And this, well, I hope it's not somebody falling.
Es un robot.
Or it's a robot, I don't know what the sound is.
Pues me empieza a interesar, o reanudo ese pensar de cómo explica cada disciplina artística este mismo sentimiento, ¿no? Entonces, pues, está con los de danza, con el cine, con la feeling. Teatro, poesía, en su cocina, haciendo música para diferentes disciplinas.
I was in relationship with other disciplines, music, dance, theater, and I just wanted to know how all this is shared. You know, with a Japanese person, for example, certain things are shared even though you don't understand the language, so there must be another language made of pauses and silences and so on. And there was this space for me that gave me a lot of freedom. You know, when I was talking, when I was 12, and it seemed that when I used to sing back then, the time would stop and there would be no space, nobody, but it would be exactly the moment where I am present. And on a daily basis I can feel lots of emotions, and I remember I was in a dance class and I had to do some gestures and I had to remain silent, and all of a sudden I was moved and I would cry. I started crying slowly.
No es el canto.
And I thought, oh, it's not the singing. It's the fact that I am present.
No es poco.
It's the fact of being present, which is huge. But it's true also that through singing, through music and art, it's easier for me to get there. But to me, realizing that by just being there, I could be so moved. Well, for me, it was like a moment of enlightenment. You know, all this singing, and all of a sudden, wow, I am present. And I tried to recover singing, but then, you know, the time comes where social media appears, and there's this moment where everything is hurrying up, everything is rushing. But fortunately enough, I also live in the countryside, and I can resort to that, even though I'm concerned about those people living with all this anxiety. And things start changing, and as I said before, the season may be the same and spring may be the same, but you are another person. And the next spring your voice has changed, and you have to understand that actually also your body gives you a new framework of action, and maybe you just have to drop or release what is not useful anymore, and you have to celebrate it, and you have to start cooking with your new ingredients. So I think it's in this last
y trabajar
decade
mucho en comunidad. O sea, ahora para mí
that this has happened, and to
tener
me,
un buen equipo.
what's important also is to try to work in community.
Vamos a tope.
I mean, having a good team.
Bueno, un equipo, ¿no? Esto de un animal vivo que va cambiando, ¿no?
The
Igual que
fact
tú,
of
¿no? Que
having a
dices eso, ser
team, which is a
valiente,
kind of
ser
living
flexible para
animal
cambiar
that
cuando
keeps
toca o
changing the
para
way you do.
insistir con algo que aún está.
And this is
está ahí.
being flexible.
Espera, me he despistado con el patapum.
Now I got a little bit lost with that noise before.
Entonces,
But well,
eso sí, que me da mucho gusto eso. O sea, me
talking about
encanta entender,
community.
porque
Yes,
también se nos educa mucho como
I
que
love
líder,
to understand
pero
because
entender la importancia
we're
del que te lleva
being
la contraria, del que es
educated
silencioso, el que te da los recursos.
to be a leader,
eso,
but
cómo
you
se
know,
multiplica la
there's
belleza
always
en
this
comunidad, como
beauty
tiene
that can be
tanto
multiplied thanks
sentido
to
todo,
the
¿no?
effect of the
En esa
community.
soledad.
Everything seems
Bueno,
to
la
be
soledad es buena como
meaningful.
primer
And solitude
primera
is
terapia. Yo, por
good
ejemplo,
as the
escribo muy
first
automáticamente,
therapy.
¿no?
For example,
Musicalmente
I
la primera
write in an automatic
célula, digamos,
manner.
como si
And
me la
musically
chivan.
speaking, well, I
Y ahora me
just
está pasando últimamente con las letras que no me había
start
pasado.
and
Pienso en
then
algo
kick off.
y escribo así.
And I
Y así
just
como para
think and
terminar, que
write.
no tengo conciencia
And
del
now to
tiempo para nada.
finish, and I've lost the track
El
of
momento en el
time.
que me encuentro ahora,
The moment
sí, he
where I
seguido
find
siempre
myself now,
interesadísima en
I've always been
artística.
interested in all
No
artistic
deja de
disciplines.
sorprenderme la música, me parece
But of course, music keeps surprising me.
un super invento.
I think it is a
He vivido cosas
super
que
invention,
no dejan de
and
emocionarme, ¿no? Desde
lived things that
cantar en
moved me
hospitales
to
y ver
bits.
que a
I've
alguien le
been
quitas el
able
dolor y le
to
pueden
sing in
poner una vía,
hospitals, and then
o que se mueve, o que le
you
da paz, ¿no? La
have an
paz.
effect, a soothing effect on
No es
people
poca cosa,
who
¿no? Me
will,
acuerdo
for a
estaba
moment, not
cantando
feel
la
pain
UCI y
anymore,
yo decía, ¿te puedo
or
cantar?
you know,
No sé muy bien por qué.
you're going
Me han
to
dicho que venga,
give
pero
peace
estás
to
muy
people,
mal.
and maybe
Y
you're
dice, sí, canta. Y terminé y
singing in
digo,
front of sick
le digo,
people,
¿qué?
and
Sílvia,
you're
¿algo?
asking,
Y dice,
can
"No,
I
me da
sing?
mucha paz.
And
Por un
actually
rato me he
people
pensado
answer, yes, please
si
sing.
podré caminar o
And,
no.
and they say that you're giving them peace.
O luego
And
estar
this
en un
is so
psiquiátrico
important.
cantando y que me
Or
venga
I was
un
also at
señor
this
y me diga, oye, has
psychiatric
hecho algo muy
ward,
importante.
and I
Y
was
luego me viene una
singing,
enfermera y
and
me
then
dice,
a
hacía 3
patient
meses que
comes,
no hablaba este
you
señor.
know, you said something
O
very
en el
important to me,
geriátrico
and
ves
then
la
the
gente
nurse
cómo
comes
se
and says,
despide, o
you
una
know, the man who
presión,
talked to
cómo la
you,
gente mediante
he
la
had
música se siente libre.
not talked to anybody
O a
for 3
nivel
months. So
político de justicia, ¿no? Una
it
fórmula
really makes you
inmortal
feel useful, the fact that
donde
you're
nadie
giving
te
this
puede
kind of freedom,
contestar,
and also in a political
contada como un
context,
cuento,
you know,
o sea, resumida
the
sin
fact that
paja,
you're able
y
to
puedes dejar
to
constancia
tell
de
stories
algo
and
importante.
to
Y ahora
summarize
decía,
things.
pues,
And
el
now I
último
was
disco
saying,
que he hecho se llama Toda la
my
vida un día.
last album
Creo que es porque
is
tengo
called
cumplo 40 y
All
me
My
siento así
Life
como
in
en
One
medio.
Day.
Y lo
It's
que hago
because I
es
turned 40, so I
reivindicar
feel
la
like
belleza
I'm
de todas
kind
las
of in the
edades.
middle of my life.
Creo
And
que
I claim
se-
for the beauty of
se cuida mucho
diversity.
el artista
I
joven,
think that
pero
we
el arte
tend to
tiene que
take
acompañar
care
a todo ser
of
humano
young
en toda su
artists,
vida.
but I
Necesitamos
think that
que
art
alguien hable
needs
del
to
amor, del
accompany
desamor,
people
del
along their
miedo
lives.
en
We
cada
need
edad,
people to
porque
talk about love
a los
and
90
lack
supongo
of
que te
love
puedes
and
enamorar.
the fear also of
Luego
age.
también hay un poema que a
And
mí
you
me ha
shouldn't be
ayudado.
afraid of age because you can fall in
Que
love when you're
Alfredo antes ha
90.
puesto
And there was
ha citado el poema de otra chica, no me acuerdo
Alfredo
cómo era, que
who
decías, esta
mentioned the
noche la
poem
poesía no sé
by
si
another
sea suficiente. Y yo
person.
siempre pensaba, ay, no me digas
And I
eso,
thought,
porque realmente pienso que es el
I
único
think
amparo
that
real, ¿no?
to me
Y hubo
it's
un
the
poema que a
only
mí me
thing
ayudó
to
mucho,
grasp poetry, and there was this
que decía,
poem by Carlos William
aterrados
who said,
buscan una flor familiar donde guarecerse.
the
les
afraid
asusta la
ones
inmensidad del
are
campo.
seeking
"Ay,
a
es esto, la
familiar
inmensidad.
flower that will
No puedo
protect
con
them,
ella,
but
pero si
they're
voy flor a
afraid of the
flor,
immensity of the
canción a
countryside.
canción,
And it's
persona a
true, you
persona,
know,
verso a
this
verso,
huge
entiendo
spaces,
algo,
well, I
tiene
cannot
sentido y
deal with
sabes la
that, but
belleza
maybe
dentro del
thinking
horror.
about one precise
Quiero
thing,
pensar que por lo menos
and so maybe,
esta noche sí
maybe,
que la poesía nos va a
maybe
salvar.
poetry is
Y
going
si
to
esta
help.
noche no, que mañana vuelva, por
And if
favor.
poetry cannot help to, or serve tonight, I hope that tomorrow poetry will serve. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Nos vas a cantar algo.
Are you going to sing for us?
Si quieres.
If
¿Sí?
you want.
Yo digo, como yo digo, nos hemos conocido ahora,
I was
¿no?
thinking,
Y yo le digo, ¿nos
we
vas a
got to
cantar
know
algo?
each other now. So I thought, well, please sing something for us. So what can I sing?
Pero esto no ha pasado toda la mañana o eso.
But is this happening all the time or it's just right now?
Está bien. Aterrados buscan una flor familiar donde guarecerse y les asusta la inmensidad del campo, del campo, del campo, del campo. Y otra letra que me gusta mucho, ya que estamos.
And some other lyrics that I love too, now that we are
Quiero
on it.
salir distinto, quiero salir distinto, que yo prefiero el desastre y escucharte sin prejuicio, que yo prefiero el desastre y escucharte sin prejuicio, con sombrero y sin cigarro, con sombrero y sin cigarro, con paciencia y manos recias, estamos vivos de milagro, con paciencia y manos recias, que estamos vivos de milagro.
¡Qué lujo!
Genial. Muy bien,
¡Qué placer!
Igualmente.
It's been great meeting you. The same.
Es que no sé el tiempo lo que ha pasado.
I don't know what
Vamos a
happened.
charla, preguntas con canciones.
Mixing, questions, answers with songs.
Sacamos lo que se da, ¿no?
This is it, I guess.
¿Queréis intercambiar un poco o estamos todavía
¿Cómo está?
a tiempo?
Do we
Estamos
still have
bajo la
some
emoción
time? We're still
todos, la
under
verdad.
your spell.
Yo pensaba que acababa tan genial, ¿no? Como que las palabras sobran, ¿no? O sea,
It
ya lo
was
hemos
great.
contado todo.
We don't
Sí,
need
la
Y
more
esta
words.
final para mí es súper emotivo y me parece como
This
tan
ending
genial,
is
¿no?
so
Dices,
emotional. It's genius. We need no more words.
Ay, macho. Desde la experiencia y desde la emoción, ¿no?
Since
Habéis
this
hablado las dos de cómo
emotional
mover esas piezas,
point, this
desde vuestra
position, how to
experiencia cada una, y
move
sin duda
your
habéis movido todas las
pieces,
vuestras, ¿no?
your
Desde nuestras cabezas
experiences.
hasta
You've
nuestros
touched
cuerpos, han
us,
salido
our
lágrimas
minds, our
y-
bodies.
y han
We've shed
permitido
tears.
darnos una esperanza, ¿no? Frente a
you've allowed us to shed some hope
también de ver la realidad
and to talk
cruda,
about the
como hemos visto
need
esta mañana,
of
¿no?
this crude
Pero
reality
nos
as
habéis
we
dado
saw
la
it
posibilidad de
today,
seguir
this morning.
creyendo en
You've given
poder
us the
combatirla
possibility of
y seguir soñando.
wanting to keep dreaming and keep fighting.